Hello everybody and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today we'll be doing a box office breakdown for this past weekend, which saw the release of The Woman King, or rather The Woman King that distorts actual history by kind of glossing over the fact that the tribe that is featured in this film was very much a major part of the slave trade, not only having their own slaves, but also selling said slaves into the transatlantic slave trade. But apparently that's something that's just glossed over in the movie, as I personally have no interest in seeing this movie for that very reason of them clearly distorting history to try to push various political agendas instead, and I just think that's downright disgusting and despicable. So we have that new film. We also have brand new releases of Pearl, See How They Run, and a couple others as well, including the second weekend numbers for a couple other movies, and some updates on films like Bullet Train and Jurassic World Dominion, which I know everyone is excited to hear my thoughts about. So before going any further, though, please make sure you smash that like button, allow that fire button if you're watching over on Odyssey, and also make sure that you are subscribed to the channel with the bell notification on. That way you know every time a video or live stream goes live on the channel. So the word that I've been hearing from a lot of people on social media is that The Woman King is getting a lot of conversations around it, because apparently a lot of people who have either seen the film or are seeing calls to boycott the movie are actually starting to look into the history of the tribe that is being featured in the film. And guess what? Turns out, that tribe had slaves because as they were conquering other tribes, expanding their own empire within Africa, they also then enslaved said tribes, and also in addition to that sold said slaves to the transatlantic slave trading. And so it's interesting to me that the movie is supposed to be all about strong women, right? It's supposed to be about that first. And then also it's supposed to be about trying to save Africa, trying to stave off the invasion of the white man. Again, this is what the trailer tells us at the very least, when in reality it's actually, wait, these people in this tribe is actually, they're the villains too. It seems like there's multiple villains going on here, and I'm sure that there's an oversimplification of the whole invasion storyline that is probably missing some nuance, just as much as it is missing the fact that this tribe here, again, trying to call out or trying to have the main storyline be about trying to prevent slavery while they themselves are partaking in it. It's a bit hypocritical, and to have anyone try to defend this movie, it seems that it's a losing battle, and it seems that a lot of people, as they are continuing to search through this history and find out more about this tribe that committed various atrocities, is starting to actually learn what the actual history is and not just what the mainstream media and what Hollywood would want you to actually think about the movie instead. With all that being said, the film did still perform very well. It made $19 million domestically. This was a film that was projected to make around $18 million, and so it did better than what was expected. The big question that I have is, what will that second weekend number look like? Will enough people start to actually hear about this history? Will they actually start to do their own research instead of just assuming what Hollywood tells them or assuming what the overlords on social media tell them is true or trustworthy? Will they actually finally start to be able to wake up and think for themselves and actually start to apply themselves, or will we see continued ignorance, etc.? I think that we'll probably see a little bit of both. That's just kind of the nature of the machine, right? Even when things are right on the surface, right on their face, either false or just clearly wrong, or there's just something that's just right there in front of you. Some people, they can see it pretty easily, and for other people, they can't see it as easily. And so I think the same will be for this movie as well. Regardless of any of that, film still made $19 million domestically, no international numbers to speak of. So with a $50 million budget needing to make $125 million to break even, it's looking like this movie has a chance, but it'll depend upon, I guess, the moral principles of the human beings and others who might actually want to resist a movie that's clearly trying to present one side of the story, but also not just even one side of the story, a side that is not even based in truth or fact. So hopefully it is once again a time where Hollywood gets screwed over here, because screw Hollywood. Anyway, coming in number 2 this weekend is Barbarian, dropping only 40% in its second week of release. And with that $6.3 million, it brings its domestic to $20.9 million, meaning the film is right on the cusp of breaking even and likely will in the next week or two. So kudos to you, 20th Century Studios / Disney, for making a film that's able to be, because of a very small budget, much more easily to make its money back. Imagine if you did that for your bigger budget films where you're just kind of wasting and throwing $250 million on and not making your money back or making very little return on your investment. Imagine instead making films like Barbarian where, hey, there's actually a general interest in going to see the movie, and because you did not spend and overspend and waste money on said film, you can actually make some money back. Even if the film isn't all that great, or even if the film gets mixed reviews at best, you still have a better chance of making that money back. But hey, what would I know? I'm just a guy talking to a camera. Then there's the movie Pearl, which is a brand new release from A24. This is a prequel to a film that came out last year called X. This is apparently setting up for the villain that was in that movie. This movie also only cost about $1 million production, which is insane micro budget when it comes to a film. A24 is notorious for having very small budgets on their films, but $1 million is the lowest that I am aware of as far as more recently from A24. But with the $3.1 million opening weekend domestically, that film is already profitable. It's already making its money back. So yeah, again, studios, maybe you should start spending less money on your movies and actually trying to tell more interesting stories or tie them into universes that have some general interest. And maybe, just maybe then, you could start to actually see some pretty good profits at this point in time, as people are clearly much more skeptical about movies and also much more careful with what money they spend on certain movies and not. And I think that we've seen that across the board with films like Spider-Man No Way Home and Top Gun Maverick doing exceptionally well, and films like, for instance, the latest Thor film, making money, but not making the kind of money that Doctor Strange 2 had made a lot more of earlier in the summer, and seeing the kind of drop-offs that we have seen for a lot of these MCU films as of recently. And at some point, guess what? At some point, you're going to start to lose enough audiences where not only will you have the massive drop-offs from week to week, you also will have a much lower start from week to week, and that, I think, is going to be the ultimate end of that genre. At least that's my hope and prayer. Looking at See How They Run, a brand new release from Searchlight, meaning from Disney, $3.1 million. This is the one that actually looks somewhat interesting. It stars Sam Rockwell, and it looks like a fun romp of a time, if that's even the proper expression. It seems to be kind of I want to say Clue-like murder mystery type movie, and so it has piqued my interest for that very reason. And hey, I like Sam Rockwell. Saoirse Ronan's in the movie, and I think that she's a great actress as well. So yeah, this is a movie that I might actually try to catch at some point this week. You then have Bullet Train coming in the top 5. That's right. Top 5, Bullet Train. So excited to see this movie still in the top 5, only dropping 24%, making another $2.5 million after 7 weeks. This film is pushing itself towards breaking $100 million domestically, and most importantly, of breaking even. It's just within a couple of $1 million, really, of doing so. So I think this film, if it doesn't break even by next weekend, the following weekend, it will definitely do that, especially since no competition is really going to be present at the box office in the coming weeks, as no major releases are coming out until about mid-October. Top Gun Maverick is going to continue to do well for that very same reason, though this film is doing much better because, hey, I love Bullet Train, and for me, it's one of my top films of the year. Maverick, though, likely at this point, going to stay my top film of the year. Unless I see other films that somehow are able to supplant it, which I just doubt at this point. But even after 17 weeks, you heard that right, 17 weeks, still making $2.1 million, a 31% hold from the previous week. Even though Paramount is starting to pull this film out of theaters, it's still doing quite well. So hey, kudos to you, Paramount, for being able to stick around as long as you have. DC League of Super Pets from Warner Brothers making another $2.1 million. And even though its percentage drop per week has not been that bad because it had a very low starting point, it is still far away. It's still far away from breaking even, and I don't think it's going to be able to do so, at least at the box office. Invitation, different story there. After 4 weeks of release, a 36% hold, $1.7 million because of a very small budget. The film is still making more profit for Sony. Minions Rise of Gru is starting to see the end of its run, but after 12 weeks, that's to be expected. Making another $1.3 million, well over $900 million worldwide is where Minions is at this point in time. A new film from Neon called Moon Age Daydream is out, making $1.2 million out of 170 screens, which is an amazing per theater ratio. I just don't know much about it and don't really care that much about it. But hey, top 10 movie of this past week. Brahmastra Part 1 in its second week of release dropped 76% with no change in theaters, so it sounds like the people who saw this movie have seen it and no one new is really wanting to go see it. So whether this film makes money or not, it's going to be kind of a coin toss because of the fact we just don't know that much about how much they're spending on marketing costs, where it's going to be releasing in other countries, and other things like that. Beast Still hanging around in the top 12 spot here, 54% drop. However, as you can see, Sony, or rather Universal in this case, is clearly not invested in this movie enough. It's only made $30 million total domestic after 5 weeks, and this movie is pretty much done. It's too far away from its break-even point, and it's just not making enough per week. So I think it's a wise move by Universal to start pulling this film. Regardless of how good the film might be or might not be, the fact remains no one really cares to go see it. Where the Crawdads Sing, on the other hand, has actually been the strongest release really of the year so far. Compared to its first 2 weeks, the first 2 weeks only account for around 33% of its entire box office. And so this film not only doubled, but almost, you could even say, tripled what it was able to make, or at the very least, it was able to do so much more in the following weeks because of strongholds from week to week. That's just darn impressive. It's the most impressive so far of this year, at least according to percentage based on the first couple of weeks. There's also a new release, Running the Bases, which I don't know all that much about, but only made $545,000. The film Nope dropped another 51%, starting to drop out of the remaining screens that it is in. And one interesting thing about Nope is that I had said that this movie was right on the cusp of breaking even. However, the film apparently is slowing down not only this fast and this significantly amongst the domestic market, but also apparently amongst the internationals too. The internationals was the only reason why this movie was getting close to its break-even point. Because it's slowing down so much, the question mark has now been put next to this film, at least for me in my charting, about whether this film is able to make its money back at the box office. I think that it's close enough to where when you have the Blu-ray and 4K sales, it'll be able to make enough to make itself profitable, but as far as box office profitability is concerned, there are definitely some questions and some doubts that have been brought in because of how much it's slowed down, not only domestically, but internationally as well, which had been its saving grace. Thor: Love and Thunder is starting to be pulled out of all the remaining theaters, so we're looking like this movie is, again, not going to have that much profit in comparison to some of the other films that have been released over time. Other new films like God's Country, Confess Fletch, released at very small numbers of theaters, and didn't really have that great of a per-theater ratio. But one interesting fact is that Jurassic World Dominion only made $64,000 this past weekend, and apparently, according to at least Box Office Mojo and the numbers, I've checked both of them, the numbers had a lower number, in fact, than this. This movie is only at $997 million. And so, even though I said that it seemed that $1 billion was now a foregone conclusion, maybe it isn't. Maybe it's actually slowing down so much that it can't even crawl past the finish line. It'll be interesting. This is a movie where it seems like Universal just needs to have enough willpower to push this film over the edge to get to $1 billion. But the fact that the movie sucks and it still somehow made as much money as it did, it makes me happy to see this film struggle just to make the last few $1 million it needs to make to hit this number. But yeah. Anyway, the film that I thought even was gonna, just be able to pull it out in the end, apparently might not even be able to do that. That's pretty amazing. Looking at the total numbers for all these films, as you can see, The Woman King, which is not even a real thing because it's a queen, but hey, I'm sure that they didn't care. If they don't care about the logic of their title, then it helps you make you well aware of the fact that they don't care about the logic of their history, which is lacking because there is no real historical value to this movie, seeing that it ignores one of the most important parts about the history of this tribe, which again is the fact that they themselves were enslaving others and selling them to others, including non-African nations. Barbarian at $21.9 million worldwide. Very impressive numbers for that movie. Pearl at $3.1 million, already making its money back. See How They Run at $7.6 million. No budget being talked about for this movie, so I can't say whether or not the film is going to make money back or not, but hey, we'll have to wait and see. Bullet Train at $222 million, right on the cusp of its break-even point. Top Gun Maverick at $1.6 billion. DC League of Super Pets at $177.5 million. So again, has had very strong holds, but just can't quite make up the massive budget that they have for this film in comparison to what they probably should have spent on it. Invitation at $30 million worldwide, enough because of a smaller budget film. Minions at over $905 million worldwide. Beast at 55.2, again, pretty much has stopped making any money. 30 million domestic, 24 international. Not a very good look. So even though the film didn't cost all that much, not going to be able to make its money back in its theatrical release. Where The Crawdads Sing, on the other hand, is continuing to do well. Very interesting story here. Nope, at $166.6 million as well. And as I mentioned, Jurassic World Dominion, struggling to get to $1 billion, but hey, it did make its money back already and made profit, made about $350 million in net profit. But hey, the movie still sucks, so there is also that. Looking at the actual numbers themselves here on my chart on OMBReviews.com. If you want to find this chart, just check out OMBReviews.com. The Woman King at $19 million means the film right now is currently at $63.6 million in the red, as it needs to make about $125 million to break even. Pearl is already starting to make profit, so kudos to them for that. No actual numbers foresee how they run because we have no budget, but $7.6 million is where that film currently is. There were no real updates for Medieval, which was in its second week of release, but because this is the most recent number that we do have, we can project at this point, and based off of the budget for the movie, it's going to end up being a box office flop, which is not all that much of a surprise, seeing that just no one has seen the movie or heard about the movie, and it hasn't gotten a lot of traction because of that. The film Lifemark, a pro-life movie, still no budget, but made $3.6 million in total at this point. Can't project whether it'll make money or not because we don't have the actual budget in front of us. Brahmastra, again, is one of these caveat projections where it's projected to lose money, but that projection is based on what we would typically see in most Hollywood productions. And as this is an Indian production, it is much harder to say where this film will fall at the end of the day. Barbarian at $21.9 million is putting that film after 2 weeks right on the cusp of breaking even. Currently only $2.6 million in the red. I suspect that it'll be able to pass that in the next couple of weeks. Invitation still past that break-even point and still adding to its profit margins. You have then that film Beast, as I mentioned, which is starting to lose all of its theaters. Still $20.8 million in the red, and it will not be able to surpass that because it seems, again, not only is there no interest in the film, but even the company behind it does not have faith that it will be able to do so anyway. Bullet Train is only at $1.7 million in the red, as I mentioned, right on the cusp of breaking even, and I think that it'll finally be able to officially do that by next weekend, and if not by next weekend, at the latest, then by the weekend after that, especially with very little competition throughout. DC League of Super Pets, even though it is continuing to make gains, still $28.4 million in the red, and that's the reason why, as I said, the strongholds every single week are a good thing for it, but does it have enough gas in the tank, seeing that it had the starting point of being a much lower opening versus what it probably should have made? Will it be able to surpass that at $28.4 million still in the red? And this is already after they've doubled their first 2 weeks. Yeah, you can see why I have some doubts about that. Here is Nope, right now at $2 million in the red. So even though it is also more than doubled what it made the first couple weeks of release, because especially of a later release in other countries, because those countries are now starting to dry up as far as any interest is concerned, hey, could end up seeing a red mark next to this movie by the end of its run. Crawdad Sing at $40 million in the red, having one of the best performing numbers there with $33 million. Again, very, very impressive stuff to say at the very least. You also have Paws of Fury, which, yeah, left a long time ago. I don't even know why I mentioned it, but the bigger news for me is Jurassic World Dominion's $997 million. Again, not at $1 billion. People said, oh, it's guaranteed to have $1 billion. It's going to be a struggle. I still think it could happen, but it's going to be a struggle because making only 40 to 60,000 in a weekend domestically and not making that much more elsewhere, it's running out of places to go. And even though they could do a massive re-release, putting it out in a bunch of screens and offering posters or whatever, and again, they've made the profit from the movie to justify that kind of a decision to try and have that $1 billion title next to its movie, or rather next to its name, hasn't been able to do so at this point in time. But those are the numbers as they stand. What are y'all's thoughts, especially about Woman King? I mean, I think that there is a lot of controversy surrounding the lack of history here, the lack of story that the film is presenting, and really the distortion of the history. Do you think it's going to have an impact on the bottom line of this movie? Could we see a massive drop-off because of that, especially since it supposedly got an A+ cinema score, which is completely worthless because they don't give you the actual data to look into. Let me know your thoughts about that or any of the other films that I talked about in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, not that fire button on Odyssey. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge shout out for all of my September Patreon, Subscribestar, and Locals members. Starting off with my Patreon members, Chris from the 80s, that's his YouTube channel, Garrett Searles, Hymir Irie Hymason, Jeff Toon, Jonathan Carney, Laura, the Modern Major General Story, Orange Eye Reviews, you can also find on YouTube by the same name, Rosetta Allen, YouTube's name is Eagle Rider, Stan Andrian, and Miss Martin Muses, and that is her YouTube channel. Thank y'all very much for supporting me over on Patreon. Also, for all my Subscribe Star peeps, Matt317, that's his Twitch channel name, support him there. Storm Tracker, The R, Fast Reaction, Mr. Roy, J-Rod, the Beer Guru, and the K-Man. Thank you, K-Man, as well, and you can find him at xtheboundaries.co, and thanks to all of my Subscribe Star members. And lastly, to my Locals members, Locals has definitely been hopping a lot more recently. Shout out to Miss Minnesota hockey fan, how about a hockey player, UAB Mad Dog, UAB Mad Dog, Mike Jackson for the win, Brett D90, and the amazing lawyer Robert Barnes. Thank y'all for supporting me over on Locals. And an extra special shout out to newer members, Joey Horn, who is back once again, and the Empress of the Universe, Tina B. And if you want your name shouted out vocally at the end of every single live stream and video, make sure that you support me over on Patreon, Subscribe Star, or Locals, and you can find out more information about it on those websites, and check out the top link in the video description below if you want to find out more about how to get that, access to podcasts that I do with John the Flickinger, and also how to be featured on the Chosen of Valhalla live stream, which I do once a month with my Chosen of Valhalla members, and it's always a lot of fun. Anyway, that's going to be it for me today. You guys all have an amazing rest of your day. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Beautiful people, and as always, God bless.